Hello, insiders, and welcome to this new episode of the EU Bubble Insider. Our guest today is Anna Melenchuk, a policy officer at the International Center for Migration Policy Development. Anna, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Hello.
Hello, Chris. Hi, everyone.
And to start with, maybe I would give you the chance to explain both what you do at the International Center for Migration Policy Development, but also your other role, that is being a co-founder of the Institute of Innovative Governments. If you could just explain to our listeners what you do in those both roles and what are the institutions that you represent.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chris, and hello, everyone. Very quickly about myself and about the organizations where I work. Firstly, my main role is being a project officer at the International Center for Migration Policy Development. It's the international intergovernmental organization with 20 member states, and its objective is to improve migration governance and migration policy development worldwide. I'm also a co-founder of the NGO and the think tank. We can even say a think and do tank, which is called the Institute of Innovative Governance. It's an NGO and a think tank which is mostly active in Ukraine, and it looks into innovative solutions to governance challenges, such as, for example, the lack of inclusion in decision making, corruption, disinformation, and recently also the threat of emerging technologies such as the AI. We have quite a few projects in Ukraine, but also working very closely with interlocutors here in Brussels. We recently started working closely on exposing Russian propaganda and disinformation campaigns in Europe, especially ahead of the European elections scheduled for June 2024. We held a lot of advocacy campaigns in Brussels after the full-scale invasion on Ukraine by Russia, and we looked into the oil embargo, into the EU accession process for Ukraine. So indeed, I have quite a few activities going on in Brussels, and I'm happy to share with you what works and what doesn't work in the Brussels setting.
And if you could also maybe tell our listeners about the journey that brought you there, because you career spans across many different and quite interesting institutions. Just to mention the European Parliament, UNDP, and much more, many more, as I researched. And if you could name some key turning points in your career, and what was the path that you followed to get you where, if there was a path, looking back, that brought you to where you are today, doing those exciting things.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Chris. Indeed, looking back into my career path, it seems that I worked for probably every possible sector, stemming from private sector to public sector to non-governmental sector. It's fair to say that the biggest and most important part of my career, the fundamental part of my career, was actually in Ukraine, where I started working first for the Ukrainian government, for Verkhovna Rada, which is Ukrainian Parliament, and then for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ukraine. Then I was for some time supporting the Open Ukraine Foundation, which hosts the largest security forum in Eastern Europe, called Kyiv Security Forum. Later, I moved to the international organization sector. I worked for United Nations, and as you correctly mentioned, the United Nations Development Program in Kyiv, in Ukraine. And after that, I moved to Brussels, where I joined the EU institutions. Here in Brussels as well, I think I went through quite a few EU institutions in my career with different roles. I started from a traineeship in the European Committee of the Regions, where I worked on the Ukraine task force with Ukrainian local authorities and the European local authorities. Then I worked as an assistant in the European Parliament, cooperated obviously closely also with other institutions, the European Commission. At some point I also worked as an expert consultant for the European Commission, DG INTPA. I worked also for Action Aid International, which is the international NGO working to support human rights and people in poverty all over the world. And the last 4 years, almost 4 years, I'm working for ICMPD, which is the International Center for Migration Policy Development. And in this role, I am working closely with Brussels stakeholders. I'm managing projects mostly in the EU neighborhood, but also in Asia, on various topics related to migration.
And how do so many different experiences help you better understand how the Brussels bubble works?
It's exactly what helped me to understand how it works. If you manage to work, let's say, everywhere, from different angles, from different perspectives, you can better understand the EU institutions and also those that are trying to lobby and advocate with the EU institutions. So I think that's very important to be able, if not to work directly inside those organizations, but at least have some kind of experience with them. It should be, of course, non-governmental sector, because they are very active and they do represent people's voices. So if you have, let's say, a career only in private sector, try to see how NGOs work. And if you're working for an NGO for your whole life, try to see how also the private sector works to better understand those different stakeholders and how they interact and how they come together when it comes to advocacy. And of course, if you are in Brussels and you work with the institutions, it's important to get inside. There are various ways on how you can do it. Most people, they start from traineeships, internships, or some consultancy opportunities, like short-term assignments within the institutions. But if you have a chance to work for a longer time, to better understand the system, better understand the perspectives of people who work there, that will immensely help you in your future career, wherever you go, be it the private sector, non-governmental sector, or the EU institutions itself. But indeed, the mix of experiences really helps you to get a proper picture of the EU bubble and be able to make an impact in this bubble.
What would you say is the most, after having so much experience and being clearly an insider of the Brussels bubble, what is the most fascinating thing for you about this place that maybe is not so obvious for people who are not insiders?
After 6 years of being in Brussels, I don't think anything fascinates me anymore because, we worked everywhere. But I remember when I first came here, it was just fascinating for me the way the decision-making process within the EU institutions is set. It's so complicated, it's so diverse, the way the European Union is engaging with the stakeholders, the way it's trying to be inclusive, the way you can really have access to those institutions. For me, it was just fascinating. There were so many entry points, there were so many things going on that you didn't know where even to start, because every day there is something happening, be it within the institutions or outside, with the lobby organizations, with networks of private sector organizations or non-governmental organizations. And, it can seem a bit in the beginning very overwhelming. You want to go to that event, but then you want to meet that person and you're just trying to split yourself. You have this kind of a FOMO feeling, maybe I'm missing out on something. And I think that's something that really fascinated me in a positive way, but also a bit in a negative way, because I was just not sure where even to put my energy, my resources into. But then after some time, when you understand how things work, what works better, what works worse, you can really make your way through this bubble, and it doesn't seem so overwhelming or large or too active, in a way. So I would say if you join the bubble right from the beginning and it seems overwhelming or just too many things happening at the same time, it's normal, it's totally fine. Everyone gets overwhelmed, and it could be that you are just a young professional or a senior. You have a senior position just coming to Brussels now after building a career in your country. It's totally normal to be, let's say, a bit lost a few months or even up to 1 year, but then eventually you will find your way, and this difficult, complex decision-making system will not seem as strange, as big, as fascinating, or as it was when you just came to Brussels.
But that's what you're referring to is exactly the reason why the EU sometimes is facing criticism, that is so distant and bureaucratic. And of course, there's a lot of initiatives done to make the EU more accessible. But it would be interesting to learn from you how it looks from the EU neighborhood perspectives. So you work with stakeholders, organizations from outside the European Union. Is that also something that our partners from outside have to deal with? This overwhelming, maybe, the bureaucracy, if this is the right word to use. How do you how would you respond to a question like this?
Totally. I was myself this way. As I mentioned, when I came, it looked just so scary, so big, so bureaucratic, so many things going on. And most people who haven't been to Brussels before, or just starting working with Brussels, they don't even know where to start, because for exactly for the reason that you're mentioning, because it seems just so bureaucratic. There are all these entryways, but before finding out how they work, you really need to make your research. You need to understand the system. So if you're not in Brussels, and even if you work in the area of European affairs, still, you really need some support, or you need to be here to understand how to enter the system and to make some impact here, or to reach out to all the stakeholders in this closed cabinets. So yeah, totally, the issue of bureaucratic nature of the European Union is there, and it's fair that it's being criticized, because sometimes it can get very difficult to get even a meeting with the stakeholder or the interlocutor that you need, because everyone seems so busy. There is so many things going on. But again, coming from Ukraine and recently working also on many Ukrainian projects, I would say that it's a bit easier for me than maybe for some of the other member states out there in the neighborhood, but also in other regions, because Ukraine is so high on the agenda. So even if you are in Ukraine, not necessarily in Brussels, and you have some concrete expertise that you would like the Brussels-based stakeholder to know, it's very likely that you will be able to get that entry point to either European Commission or European Parliament or any other institution that is of your interest. Same, I can mention also about all these networks that are here in Brussels. It really depends on what you're working on. If your topic is really niche, very specific, and not high on the European Union's agenda, it will be difficult for you to access it and make your voice heard. Also, especially if you don't have, let's say, a large public support of your topic, your idea, or it's just not the momentum for your idea is not there. But if the momentum is there, if your topic is high on the agenda, it should not be as difficult, even if you are not in Brussels. Of course, some support from those that are in Brussels will be very much needed, just to get the introduction how things work, who are the people that you would need to access. Again, just an example from the Ukrainian experience before the full-scale invasion. Normally, your interlocutor was the DG NIR, the Director General for Neighborhood Affairs, because traditionally this is the DG that covers the neighborhood countries. So normally you would either send your report or organize the event with these specific people with the European Commission. If it's the European Parliament, you would also have the group of MEPs working on foreign policy, or the specific issue related to a neighborhood region, and you would know, normally you would know who are these people. Same for the other institutions, as the Committee of the Regions, European Economic Social Committee, etc., etc. Now, since the topic is so much on the agenda, you can even get the access to the European Council, to those stakeholders, high-level stakeholders you would normally never get access to. So it really depends on what the topic you're working on. It really depends the issue that you're working on. So let's say if it's digitalization or emerging technologies, something what my NGO is covering, that's also something very high currently on the agenda. So any expertise that you have would be very much welcomed by those interlocutors in the European Union institutions. And that's also something I'd like to mention, that within the institutions, even though it's so bureaucratic and there are so many bureaucrats working on specific topics, there is a huge hunger for expertise. Despite all the funding, all the resources on deck working on the topic, they are always looking for solutions. They are always looking for some new ideas. And if you are the person that has these ideas, if you're the organization that has those ideas, you will get this access eventually. You just need to know how to, let's say, write that intro email, whom to connect, and there you can either ask support from those that are based in Brussels and have experience working with the institutions, or you can make the research yourself. Obviously, easier way and the most direct and concrete way would be to work through people who are in Brussels. But even if you are outside of Brussels, let's say in the neighborhood, but you work on one of the topics that are so much of a priority of the European Union, or the country as itself is a priority, a bit of research, maybe you can even go on LinkedIn and find the person working on your specific topic, and you text that person. It's very likely that the person will reply because they are, as I mentioned, they are looking for expertise, and if you have that expertise, you will manage to access the bubble.
That's very interesting insights, really, and thank you for sharing that. But maybe we could dive a little bit deep, because I'm connecting this to something I saw the other day, not remember where, but the number stuck in my head, that 40% of EU regions are regions that have an outside EU border. And the priorities of those regions are not always taken seriously enough by Brussels. So what, from your perspective, what are the current priorities, policy priorities that people in Brussels, European Commission experts, of course we are in the year when everything is about to change, but the experts in the Commission will not change. So let's say if you're looking to address those people, what are the most burning issues that is worth addressing, you would say?
Totally. As you correctly mentioned, we are going now for the European elections, and things are about to change. But also, it's the time when all of those priorities are being discussed, and everyone is trying to lobby for themselves and put some of their own issues on the top of the agenda of the European Union. And you correctly mentioned that EU has so many outside borders, and that shapes the European Union very much, and it's very important that those that do not have access to Brussels for various reasons, they get this access, they get more active, especially ahead of the European elections, because that's the time when you can put your topic on the agenda. Obviously, I mean, I can name the topics that are the priority now, and I can also share my opinion on those. Yes, as I work for the migration organization, obviously migration is one of the issues, burning issues for the European Union currently. Then there are all of the issues related to digitalization and the emerging technologies. You've been witnessing everything happening with the Artificial Intelligence Act recently within European Union. Then you have the burning issue of the climate change, which has been there on the agenda for a long time, and I think now we are at the point where we are really questioning ourselves. What's next? Have we managed to achieve what we planned? Is this really as big priority as it was before? There are some other emerging issues and challenges that appeared there on the European Union's agenda and should be, let's say, intertwined with those environmental and climate change priorities that we have. So indeed, the list is big. But I think what is a bit missing and should be put out there, and myself as a Ukrainian coming from the neighborhood, I should say this very clearly and loudly, is the peace. I think we are not speaking enough about the fact that we have a war in the center of Europe, and our normal lives of European citizens can be changed in a day if Russia attacks one of NATO member states and Ukraine is not able to withstand the Russian aggression, which continues already for the third year and is increasing in scale. It seems that the European Union sanctions were not sufficient. I mean, they work, but they work very slowly, so they definitely need to be scaled up. Then Ukraine is not receiving enough weapons at this stage, and there is a big risk that Ukraine won't be able to withhold the aggression while Russia is accumulating its resources, both human resources but also military resources, and then the war can come to the European Union itself, to its member states, to first Baltic countries, could be Poland, could be Moldova, could be others, and then all of those priorities that we are discussing, the AI Act or climate change, some environmental protection issues, everything now related to our farmers, it will just will not be a priority anymore. Our priority will be to simply survive and live in peace and avoid people dying in the battlefield. So I guess these European elections, they also give us a chance to understand where our priority should lie. And the main priority for citizens living in the European Union should be peace, living in peace, in a secure environment, in a space without wars. And I think this is where also our resources should go to, and this is how we should think about shaping the agenda, the new agenda of the European Union. Of course, everything that I mentioned before, all of those issues are, of course, related to each other. It's not that they exist in silos, but if you speak about hierarchy, where we should look from the beginning, from the first level, should be obviously peace. Living in peace and secure environment, because that's why the European Union was created. That's the idea of the European Union. That's how it became existent. To be able to resist any aggression against European countries, and this aggression is happening now. So what do we do about it? How do we prevent it that it comes to our own homes here in the European Union? So yeah, that's how I would let's say quickly tell you about the priorities of the European Union ahead of the European elections. But let's observe how it goes and what would be the new program of the new European Commission.
I mean, well, clearly, I don't think there is anyone in Brussels who would say that peace is not a policy priority, but the matter is always about how you apply it and how you actually shape the debate. And this brings me to a question about the learnings, because the war, the Russian war against Ukraine, has been going on for 2 years already. It's quite a long time, where I think it's justified to ask what has, from your perspective, from following the debate in Brussels about migration, particularly, especially, I'm coming from Poland, so the debate in Poland is of course very dynamic about shaping the relationship with Ukraine, our neighbor. But what has, if there is anything that you would say the EU has learned about shaping its migration policies over those over 2 years already?
Totally. Migration is not let's say an easy topic to discuss. There are so many positions there, very often fueled by far-right movements that unfortunately now, especially before the European elections, are becoming more and more prominent, and they are playing on various opinions of people that are sometimes afraid of migrants. But I think it's very important to mention that migration is a positive phenomenon, and especially for the European Union that has a huge hunger for skilled labor. Migration is something that can help us to bring those skilled labor to the European Union and help us with the economic issues. We need people who are working. The economy is, if we want the economy to grow as it used to. So I think it's very important that especially those that are working on migration issues, they should be proactively speaking about the positive sides of migration, because there are those actors that are unfortunately speaking so much about the negative sides that it makes people be very wary about those migrants coming from other countries. Are they going to take over our jobs? No, they are here really to work and support the economies of our countries in the European Union. Looking into the last 2 years and the huge displacement from Ukraine, it obviously brought a lot of positives to European Union member states, because those Ukrainians, a lot of them, not everyone, there are obviously a lot of challenges, but a lot of them managed to integrate and find jobs and become an important part of European Union societies. I mean, yourself, Chris, as Polish, you can also confirm that I think there was some data from the Polish government that Ukrainians, displaced persons from Ukraine, contributed to almost 1% of GDP over the last year in Poland. So that's a concrete example of how migrants can really boost the economy and support the societies in the European Union. Of course, the challenges they are mostly there for migrants, because for them it's easy sometimes to integrate, to find their ways in those countries, and if we are here in Europe, if we are looking into them as those that are assets, they are coming here to support, they are coming here to work. And if we help them to integrate, that would really dramatically change all of the discussions that we have on migration. So it's very much about these attitudes that we have as people. And I think this is something that we need very much to target and to change, because unfortunately there's still quite a large percentage of population that is very afraid of migration. Say migration, they think it's something negative, but no, it has a lot of positive benefits for the European Union, and those working on this issue should really speak about it. For Ukraine itself, it's also there is a bit of a debate there. From one hand, Ukrainian government is very grateful to the European Union member states for taking on all of those Ukrainians that are running from the war, for providing the essential support. But at the same time, it's also about Ukrainian economy, and the thinking is already there, by the Ukrainian government, but also by Ukrainian civil society, how we can return people back after the war, how we can attract some foreign labor, because the economy shrank so much, so many people left. That according to some statistics, the Ukrainian labor market will need additional 8 million people to return to its previous economic growth before the war. So these are the questions that are already now within the Ukrainian society. They are also being discussed quite a lot also now in the European Union. But once again, just would like to underline that migrants are those that are really supporting the economies here, and the more we welcome them, it benefits everyone. It benefits the Ukrainians that are looking for support. It benefits also European Union member states, and benefits people, the societies itself, because it enriches our societies. The more cultures we have, the more people with various skills, different perspectives. That's what makes Europe and European Union so special, so diverse. It's really an important, fundamental part of the European Union, to be as rich and as diverse as we are. And without migration, it just cannot take place. We will just go back to our country member states. There won't be European Union. The idea also, once again, coming back to why European Union was created, to put together all of those cultures, to put together all of those perspectives, all of those nations, to work together and to build on this diversity, because only in diversity we can grow, we can innovate, we can be better.
Anna, I would like to ask you to help us understand more practically what your job entails as a project officer working on migration governance, on those partnerships. Would you be able to share a specific project that you recently worked on, that you're most proud of, or that is just most interesting, and maybe walk us through the project objectives, and maybe also what would be very interesting to analyze how you measured results of your work?
Sure. Thanks a lot for the question, Chris. From ICMPD side and my recent projects, I would definitely mention the one with the state migration of Ukraine. The program that I work on is called Migration EU Expertise. Basically, it's the EU-funded program implemented by ICMPD, where partner countries of the European Union can send their requests for assistance, for migration-related assistance at any time. It's a demand-driven project, as you can see, and it has this peer-to-peer dimension. So when we receive a request from a partner country, the idea is to engage with peers in the European Union, specifically from public administrations of the European Union working on migration issues, to channel and exchange on various expertise that exists in the European Union, but also in the partner country. Coming back to the project with the State Migration Service of Ukraine, we received a request from them 3 years ago, and it was on integration of refugees and asylum seekers in Ukraine as one of the objectives for the EU accession of Ukraine. There were a lot of obviously priorities, mostly policy priorities. We were supporting the government to develop the action plan and the strategy on integration of refugees and asylum seekers. We also looked into various ways where we can support the acquis approximation of Ukrainian legislation to the legislation of the European Union, and help them to develop various capacity building tools that would help to open the integration centers in Ukraine for refugees and asylum seekers, and develop integration courses. As you know, in the European Union, there are a lot of integration courses and integration efforts inside member states. It's mostly driven by its member states. There are various efforts by the European Union, let's say, to have some discussions on how those action plans and integration activities are run. But mostly they are all happening at the level of the member state by the government in close coordination with civil society, private sector, and other various actors like international organizations like ICMPD, for example. Indeed, the idea was to exchange on expertise, help bring Ukraine closer to the European Union in the area of migration, specifically looking into refugees and asylum seekers. But then when the full-scale invasion happened, you can imagine that most of refugees, it's a big word to say most, but many of them, they left Ukraine because, first of all, because of the personal threat. The cities were bombed, the places where they resided, it was mostly in southern Ukraine, but also in eastern Ukraine, very close to the battlefield, so they were looking for a safe haven. Some of them moved to western Ukraine, some of them moved to member states in the European Union. So let's say the integration of refugees and asylum seekers coming from third countries in Ukraine, such as from Afghanistan, from Syria, from African countries, Central Asian countries, became less of a priority. The priority was really on IDPs, because we had a huge and still have a huge displacement within Ukraine. More than 4 million of Ukrainians were forced to leave their homes in eastern and southern Ukraine and move closer, let's say, to a bit safer places in Ukraine. But just also like to highlight here, there is no safe place in Ukraine. The safe places there simply do not exist because of the air strikes, daily air strikes on critical infrastructure, but also on civilian infrastructure, unfortunately. So many people also moved abroad, and there is still a huge displacement outside of the European Union. But now with the EU accession process and the fact that Ukraine recently got a candidate status within the European Union, the priority of acquis approximation is there. So we receive also now a lot of requests from the Ukrainian government to see how we can support with the approximation of Ukrainian legislation to the legislation of the European Union, how we can improve the standards to the level of the EU. So that's what we are working on right now, trying to support Ukrainian government in this process very closely, but also support them with the ongoing challenge of migration, because Ukraine will face, as I mentioned from the beginning, a lot of challenges related to return of those who left, Ukrainians, but not only Ukrainians, but also those refugees and asylum seekers who left, because they lived in Ukraine for a long time before. They were, some of them, very well integrated, and the Ukrainian government will be looking into ways how to, let's say, incentivize them to come back after some kind of safety is established in Ukraine, ideally after the war, but also during the war. We know that there are some efforts of the government to see how we can how they can return people back already during the war. But that's also something that we are also cautioning the Ukrainian government about, because when there is no safety, if there are no jobs, no housing for people, and they have nothing to return to, it's really counterproductive, to speak about return during the war if there is nothing to offer to those people that could come back. But again, the discussions, especially about the return after the war, are there and should be there, and those discussions should take place with variety of stakeholders, with international organizations, with civil society. It should be really an inclusive process, which at the moment is I wouldn't call it completely inclusive. It's we also understand the challenges of the war. A lot of decisions are taken really on the top-down level to ensure the fast pace of decision making, because that's what you need to do during the war to be effective, to be able to withhold Russian aggression. But yeah, you need to also think about the future, and the thinking about migration, and especially how it intertwines with the economic growth is out there. And yeah, also within current projects that I do with the stakeholders I work with, these discussions are ongoing, and it's indeed very, very, very interesting.
I wouldn't like to go too much into politics here, but I'm reflecting on how much of this debate should be happening on EU level, and how much of the practical changes or adjustments are needed on national levels. Because if you consider the job market and the accessibility of the job market, for example, I know that there exists something like the EU skills taxonomy, but it's not well implemented across member states. So, for example, if you work in the energy sector and you want to transition from a coal mine job in one country to solar or wind engineer in another country, and you have some certification, it's not always that easy to transfer. And I would assume it gets even more difficult if you come from outside the European Union. So the question that I have, if you think there is an answer to that, where is the balance between discussing this on the EU level and how important are our national regulations to actually make it work in practical terms?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a question about the migration phenomenon within the European Union, and it's very much related also to the current migration reform within the EU. To which extent are we harmonized? To which extent member states are coordinated when it comes to migration? How do we really ensure that there are the European solutions to all of the issues that you mentioned about the skills recognition? It's a tough one. I do believe that there must be European solutions. That the European Union should be proactive in managing to bring member states together on board, and to have those discussions, those interoperability among member states when it comes to skills recognitions, especially for migrants, because currently it's mostly regulated by member states' national their own legislation. Coming back to the project where I work, and Ukrainians, it's still a big issue. There are a lot of people who came to the European Union with higher degrees, with specialized diplomas, very skilled migrants that are unfortunately currently working in a very low skilled jobs, because they cannot get their qualifications recognized for various bureaucratic reasons that exist on EU member states level. Those issues are discussed at the European level, but again, how this European solution on skills recognition can look like, it's something also for I guess now the new Commission to look into, to decide on one common European solution for this issue. It's very important that those that are coming, if their skills are not needed, let's say in the member state where they are staying, maybe their skills will be needed in a different member state, or they will need a reskilling, right? They will need to go through the program where they would get a different skill that is very much required by European Union member state, where they would work for some period of time, and ideally the skill that would also be needed later for Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery. So there is this concept going on, being discussed about the dual intent integration. So people are integrated in European Union member states' labor markets based on their needs, but they're also getting the qualifications that would be needed later for Ukraine's reconstruction and development after the war, which could be some, let's say, engineering positions, something related to green recovery, digitalization, because once again, we are all moving towards having smart economies, smart public sector, where you could use technologies, but also in a safe way. And specialists in this area would be very much needed, not just in Ukraine, which is a bit more developed digitally country than most of the European Union member states, but also here in the European Union, we all want to have effective, fast, smart digital solutions that would, make our bureaucracy life a bit easier. But how to make it in a safe way? Who are the people that would build those solutions? So we all need those engineers, those IT professionals. But how to attract them? How to teach them? How to retain them? How to offer them, good conditions for work? Because there is also the global competition outside, and I think European Union should also think for the strategy on how to attract the skilled foreign labor, but also how to retain it, to ensure that those skilled labor are staying here in the European Union and are not going outside where they are offered a better deal. It could be the United States, it could be some of the emerging economies. Everyone is now looking for skilled labor. And us in the European Union, these are those migrants that we need to think of. Who are those? How we can train them? How we can retain them? How we can make our economies interesting for them to stay, to integrate, and help us to grow our countries, our European Union together. These are all the very big questions that will be there still for the new European Commission to tackle, to solve. But from my perspective, I do believe that should be very, very high on the agenda.
Last question about last policy-related question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how digitalized would you say is the migration process into the EU on a very general level from the migrants' perspective?
It depends really on the member state, I think, when we are speaking about the border, I mean, migration is very much driven by the EU member states. But if you are speaking about the border management, when you access the border, I think the European Union borders, the Schengen area is really moving quite fast towards digitalization. There are a lot of technologies that are used already and that are being planned to be used, and they are now being evaluated also, once again, for GDPR, for the safety, for the rights protection. That is also very important. So if when you just enter the European Union, you see quite a digitalized borders, quite effective borders, and those technologies are already there. Some of those technologies, new emerging technologies, are being planned, discussed at least at the policy expert levels. Then when you try to integrate and when you start your life in one of the EU member states, then it really depends. Even if you are in Germany, for example, it's quite a bureaucratic country, not a digitalized one, for various reasons, historic reasons. But then, let's say, since we are in Brussels, in Belgium, here the situation is much better, right? You have the ID card, and with this ID card, you can really access a lot of digital services. But still, the bureaucracy exists. It's still out there. You have good and bad examples. I mean, obviously, Estonia is the best example out there. Everything is digital. You can even vote online. It's a question if it's safe or not. Still, we are trying. We are with some success cases, some not very 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 successful cases. It's very important to ensure that all of those digital services, public services that are there, are safe, because once again, another big challenge that our new European Commission would need to deal with, how to regulate all of those emerging technologies to ensure that our rights of the citizens are protected, that we are feeling safe when we are using the digital services, but at the same time not to over-regulate, because over-regulation could lead to European businesses running away from the European Union and finding better conditions outside of the European Union, where there are less regulations, where they can develop their digital solutions without any hurdles, any issues, any high taxes, for example. It's another topic here. Taxes are really important, but then how to still be competitive if you look outside, and there are so many tax benefits being offered to creators, to IT developers outside of the European Union. We really need to evaluate what we can offer to them, what European Union can offer that can retain these people out there, here, I mean, in member states in the European Union. To be able to be competitive with the world that is moving very quickly with the digitalization pace, and really if you look at the European Union and try to put EU out there, I'm not sure we are the runner-up. I'm not sure we are really that effective out there. So the solution should be found. The discussions should take place, and once again, it's another priority for the European Commission. First of all, as I mentioned from the beginning, ensuring peace and security in Europe, being able to give a steadfast response to the European aggression and support Ukraine, because that's the only country basically fighting the European war at the moment for all of us, for all of the member states. And then all of these issues that we mentioned, migration, how to attract and retain skilled labor within the European Union, how to protect the rights of migrants that are coming to the European Union in search for safety, that are running from wars, those displaced persons, refugees. Then we have everything related to digitalization, as we discussed, how to stay competitive, how to make sure our economy grows and our IT specialists, programmers, they stay here, they do not go outside, and they are developing this economy, our economies, right here. Climate change is still out there. How to ensure that we live in not a polluted environment, how to find a global solution, because one European solution it won't fly, if the European Union stops polluting, there will be China polluting, there will be African countries polluting, America and others. So how to find a global solution to the climate change challenge? Also keeping in mind that as Europe here, we have a major polluter, which is the war, because any efforts about the clean technologies, renewables, taken on a small level, which may seem as a big success and very important for the future, are just being diminished by the war, which pollutes incredibly, all the tanks, the shells, and it's here in the center of the war. So that's also the major source of the pollution, and how to make sure that pollution is not happening. Well, to stop the war. How to stop the war is to support Ukraine. So again, as I mentioned, all of those issues are so well connected that I think a new European Commission will have a tough time to suggest an effective program which will drive the European Union for the next not easy years to come.
Based on your example, I would like to shift now to the questions I usually ask in the final of the interview, which is some career-related things. And based on your example and your experience, for someone who arrives in Brussels today, and would like to pursue a career in the space of migration policy, so the things that you do, where should that person start? What's the best way to approach to launch your career? Where do you go? Where do you learn? What's most important in this space right now?
Thanks, Chris. It's not an easy question, because I think everyone has their own unique way to start. It really depends also what you want to achieve before really coming to Brussels and starting your career here. You really need to understand what I want to, what could be my impact, what I'm bringing to this bubble. And when you understand your own value, that will help you to drive your career path. If you want to join the European Union machinery, the EU institutions, and work from inside, obviously the best way to start, depending obviously also on your level. I mean, if you're a young professional just starting your career, the best way would be a traineeship or an internship with the institutions. But if you're a senior professional, I would suggest doing some consultancies first, offering your expertise to the European Commission or to the European Parliament, working as advisor, approaching some of the interlocutors from the Commission or other institutions, and offering your expertise could be a good entryway. Then, of course, there is the EPSO competition, and if you want to really enter and be part of the system, you would need to pass all of those tests like CAST or EPSO. And but it's not an easy. Also, I wouldn't recommend this as a first thing to start. If you're joining the bubble, really try to understand your added value, the impact you can bring for Brussels, for the European Union, and that will help you really to navigate. It could be that really working for network-based organizations or international organizations or non-governmental organizations that are doing advocacy with the European institution could be much more effective for you, could be much more interesting for you. So it really, really depends. I would say if you're working a bit outside the EU institutions, you have more freedom, you have more flexibility to develop your expertise and offer it to those that are taking the decisions. But again, it may not work for everyone. There are people that prefer to, work as a small part of the big machinery and, provide their own expertise within this big bubble. But once again, EU institutions are quite restrictive in a way, right? So if you're working outside, you have some good ideas. It could be that if you join international organizations or some of the NGOs or the networks, the Brussels is organized in a way that private sector or non-governmental organizations, they work in associations or member-based organizations, and this way they are able to amplify their voices when they approach the European Union. And it's also very interesting. It's very interesting career path you can take if joining one of those associations. So yeah, you would need to really see what's your added value, what's your expertise, what are your skills, what the topic you're working on, and then to decide. Being bureaucrat has its perks, obviously, but also has its limitations. Same I can also mention for those working outside of the bubble. Now also another trendy phenomenon is being, let's say, a consultant, working for your own startup, your own business. Could be also one of the ways to enter your career in bubble, because again it offers so much flexibility. You can select yourself the clients you want to work with. It's also something that is quite trendy at the moment, and there is a huge need also for this kind of people that are flexible and they are they are able to go, let's say, on a mission, do something quickly, write a report, organize an event, and be present in various settings. So it really depends on the person, depends on what you want to achieve in Brussels. But what I can definitely promise that it will be a fascinating journey, maybe a bit overwhelming from the beginning when you just join and you see all those big buildings, those people behind the closed doors with the serious faces. But I'd say a few months up to 1 year, you will really see that it may look a bit overwhelming, but essentially, if you understand how it works, it's very fascinating and interesting process to be able to impact on the policies of the European Union, and support Europe as it is, as we want it to be, not a range of member states working separately, but as one union, all working together towards our better future. future, and towards security and peace. That's also something I would like to highlight in the end of our discussion, because that's where we started as the European Union, and that's where we should put our priority for the next years to come.
Thank you very much, Anna. And my last question, before I let you go, it's one that I ask to every guest of this podcast, and that is about the phenomenon of the work-life balance. When I say work-life balance, what comes to your mind? Is this something you have a good grasp of in your life? Do you have some hints to share for fellow insiders and listeners of this podcast?
Yeah, it's exactly what I mentioned. In the beginning could be hard to find a work-life balance, because you see all those work-related events going on, all work-related debates. I don't know, meetings. It could be very overwhelming. So it's very important, especially in the beginning, to really understand what are your boundaries, what you want to achieve, and that will really help you out right from the beginning. If you know why you're here, if you know your objective, if you know what impact you're bringing, it will help you to narrow down your professional life in the sense that it doesn't overlap with your personal one, because that's really important to find the source of inspiration and of renewing your energy. Because in Brussels, that I can promise for sure, if you're coming for the first time, you will need to give a lot of energy to be able to make this impact and this change that you want to see. So you will need to find also a source of the energy for yourself to recover and get this energy. And that's something everyone would need to figure out for themselves. Brussels, in addition to having all of those concrete buildings and all the EU institutions, it also has some beautiful parks. So if you're a nature lover, everyone will find something for themselves here. There is a fantastic airport. So if you want to connect to your country where you come from, there are various ways you can come back to your country to spend holidays with your family, with your friends. But it depends. Every person has their own way to recover, to find the energy to keep going with the professional life, and you can find it in Brussels. Just really, it's important to do it from the beginning, because there are unfortunately a lot of cases of people burning out, because, as I said, it's overwhelming from the beginning, especially with everything going on. It may be that at some point you will just see yourself just working, just going from one event to another, writing one report and another. It can be a bit difficult also for your mental well-being. So really finding that source of inspiration, that source of energy, that source of calmness that can just calm you down, where you can find your peace, could be critical for your mental well-being, for the work-life balance in the years to come when you join Brussels.
That's a very very good insight, and to enjoy Brussels. And also, if I may add one thing, is that it really depends on where you come from to Brussels, because I have friends who complain about the Brussels weather, and I understand that if you come from Greece or let's say Spain, the Brussels weather may not be the ideal one. But me coming from Poland, I consider the Brussels weather actually a very nice one, a mild one. The summers are not so hot as ours, and the winters are not so harsh as ours. So it's also a funny thing that depending on where you are based from, where you come from, Brussels can offer you a different perspective on enjoying your time outside of work.
Totally. It's much harder, I think, for those coming from Southern Europe, people who used to a lot of sun. Here, unfortunately, there is not so much sun. But I totally agree. It's the winters are not harsh, the summers are not harsh, the climate is mild, the spring and autumn is fantastically beautiful in Belgium. These are the best times, I think, to be in Belgium. And that's also the time where there is most of the work going on. So if you work and then outside of your working hours, you have a lot of sun or some nice weather, it really comforts you. And for summer, for winter, it's a period when people normally have some holidays, so there is some break from work, you can go somewhere. I think Brussels offers a lot of ways to find a good work-life balance. It should not intimidate you and those that are saying that it's just so hard with no sun out there. There is a way to manage. There is a way.
And I think that's the best way to conclude our conversation today. Anna Melenchuk was our guest. Thank you, Anna, so much for your time today, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for the invitation, and thanks everyone for being with us today. Thank you.